Hello and welcome to the Watering Hole. Thanks for checking out this clip. Don't forget to like and subscribe because that'll make the baby Jesus cry, and I know how much you guys love making the baby Jesus cry. Grace College professor ousted after online commenters flag woke social media posts. So, one of the reasons I grabbed this one, which this is one I found myself, is that, so you remember we interviewed Thomas Smith from the Where There's Woke, well, Thomas and Lydia from Where There's Woke.
Yeah.
One of the things that they do is they will look at people who say like, oh, I got fired because I was canceled by the woke mob. And they will examine their story and find out whether or not it actually makes sense. And spoiler, it never makes sense. It's always like they got fired for something else. And then they decided that they could capitalize on them being fired by claiming that it was because of woke stuff. And then they do the right-wing speaker tour circuit. And
Yep. I was like the dude I was doing a video response to yesterday is like a 200,000 subscriber channel, and he had a Why I Left the Left video.
Yeah.
And when he would do the Steven Crowder thing where he would flash statistics on the screen for just a nanosecond, and then they would leave the screen. And then I would go, okay, let me double check those stats you threw up real quick. Not by pausing the video and looking at the stuff you're bringing up, but by going and looking at source statistics real quick to see what they look like. Because one of the things he said is he left the left because more people died by lightning strikes per year than police killed black people. So I was like, that sounds like a very easily tracked claim. Let's go check down that claim. 225 black people were killed in police shootings. 1,000 something people were killed in total. So they still make up double what they would in population statistic numbers. And then looked to see how many people died in lightning strikes during the same year I was doing that data search for. 13. 13 is a lower number than 225. It's a much lower number than 225. But apparently the numbers are the other way around, according to him, when you don't actually fact check the words he's saying. Just people are great, and they lie for money.
Yeah, so the people on the right will often claim to have been canceled and fired because of the woke left. And then when you dig into their story just a little bit, it ends up just falling right apart.
It always does, because they're lying.
Meanwhile, when you go the other direction, so this guy, he's Matt Warner. He's a professor at Grace College. He was fired for being woke. And when you look into
according to him,
no, he was fired for being too woke. So he was fired by the people who are trying to say the woke are trying to cancel everybody.
Oh, so he got canceled by the anti-wokes who definitely never do the canceling.
He got canceled by the anti-cancel culture people. And when you look into his story, it's actually what happened. And and it's worse too. Because like, okay, first we got Rosina says, I got fired last week because my disability, major depressive disorder, negatively affected my performance at a large tech company, wasn't due to a woke mob. I'm so sorry, Rosina. Stop sending me money if you got fired. I'm like, no.
That's what happened to me when I was working at Quick Trip. I was applying for FMLA and everything when I had depression and anxiety going like bad, and I was on Klonopin from like company insurance, so they even had evidence that was happening. And the fight with FMLA to get the leave that would have made it to where I wasn't breaking any rules by taking the days off that I was, by fighting with FMLA, it made everything worse, and I just had to quit. Instead of keeping a $40,000 a year job that had a full healthcare benefit package and retirement package, the active effort of trying to get the leave that they knew I should have was too much.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the system. It is fucking nuts how much the system that neurodivergent people have to navigate through is designed specifically for neurotypical people. Like it seems designed to be harder for people with neurodivergence of one kind or another. It's ridiculous. Like as someone with ADHD, you know how much fucking extra paperwork that is impossible for people with ADHD I have to do because I have ADHD? it's stupid. Like, there should be easier ways. There should be more accessible ways to do this. Anyway, so this professor was apparently really, really great. Now, I want to preface this. He is a bigoted piece of shit. This professor. So, so I'm not going to, like, this article is written kind of from the perspective of like, oh, this poor victim, but like, I don't feel that bad for him. He was a bigoted piece of shit. He just happened to be a bigoted piece of shit who understood the difference between his personal religious belief and civil rights. So he was less of a piece of shit than most bigoted pieces of shit. So I don't know. I'm not going to pretend that he's a victim. Like he is a victim, but I'm not going to like be all sympathetic towards him.
Just going to use him as a piece of information.
Yeah. So 4 months on the job. He was just hired at Grace College. And after 4 months on the job, he was informed by the school's president, Drew Flam, that the board had come to the conclusion that we don't think it works out to move forward. According to Religion News Service, which is where I'm getting the story from. Warner's termination is the latest in a string of professor terminations at Christian colleges seemingly tied to clashes over narrowing and often unspoken political and theological criteria. So now, while this is specific to LGBTQ rights and Black Lives Matter and stuff like that, I do also want to kind of extend this out and be like, this is why the mythicists in the Did Jesus Exist debate have a leg to stand on, because Christian institutions are responsible for employing most of the people who work in biblical scholarship and New Testament scholarship. Most of the historians that are interested in examining the question of did Jesus exist work for Christian institutions that do shit like fire people when they come to conclusions that they don't like. And so then the mythicists can use that to say, hey, all these people have had to sign statements of faith saying that they agree that Jesus existed, so of course they conclude that Jesus existed. Their livelihood depends on it. Now, personally, I don't actually care about the answer to the question, did Jesus exist? I think that probably the guy the Gospels are based on did exist in some form or another, definitely not the form that we see in the Bible. I think he probably was a real guy. That is like the easiest explanation for how Christianity itself exists. But like, if you want to actually win that fight, you got to stop tying your scholars to conclusions, like a priori. It just doesn't work. But yeah, I just wanted to get that little piece in. And actually, John, Godless Engineer, who is a mythicist, is he's going to be doing a guest video for my channel next week. Because like I've just been really struggling to catch up after the emergency shit that I've been dealing with. So he's kind enough to catch up with that. So like, it's not like I'm antagonistic towards the mythicists, but I do disagree with them. So John and I can have this disagreement. We can still be friends.
I've been on a public debate with John about mythicism years ago, and we're still friends. We did Magic the Gathering stuff like a month ago.
I think I got into it with him on tweets at one point.
Like I've had that. We've both had that discussion and publicly, and it doesn't affect anything. So
Naramdaputz is asking, isn't there some really weird beef between GE and Dapper Dino? I think that was related to the Steve McRae thing, and that was just. The Steve McRae thing was a whole big piece of shit where like everybody, like Steve and Kyle were both massive pieces of shit, and John and Casey kind of got caught in the middle of that, and I feel bad for them for that. Uwu helps abate the depression. #HandsomeGoat. Yeah, so people did tag me in some Handsome Goat stuff on Twitter after last week's stream, and it was indeed a handsome goat. But anyways, back to the article. So there was an online termination campaign started in a Facebook group by like not college students, by like parents and college stakeholders and whatever. And the campaign demanded Warner's removal due to his social media posts about LGBTQ rights, Black Lives Matter, and his critiques of the GOP. Almost all of the posts predated Warner's employment at the college. So basically he said that well, we have an image of, so as far as gay rights go, he says, I support gay marriage because I love my neighbor. Men who have been married for 20 years should have the right to be present when end-of-life decisions are being made. Supporting gay marriage is a civic issue and an expression of democratic liberalism. Opposing it is bigotry. So, like, that's a good take from someone who is actually anti-LGBTQ. Like, when you ask him about his own personal views, he's like, yeah, no, civically speaking, from a like governmental standpoint, they should have the same rights as everybody else. But personally, I don't think it's right. So, like, he's still bigoted, but he at least acknowledges that you keep religion out of the politics. Like, just because it's against his religion doesn't mean it's against everyone's religion. And religion has no place in politics. So, like, good on him for that.
And that makes sense. It's better than the Kent Hovind response of we should have a theocracy.
Yeah.
And it's better than the Steven Anderson response of I don't care what kind of theocracy it is so long as we get to kill the gays. Like, it's...
Oh. Warner and his wife said they both left behind jobs and sold their home in Metro Detroit to move with their 3 kids to Warsaw, Indiana for Warner's job at Grace. They gave up 60% of their income for him to take it. Now, they're like, when I first read through this, I was getting ready to be like, oh, they gave up this, this metropolitan lifestyle in a big city, making lots of money, and moved out to buttfuck Indiana. But it's like, nah, it's Detroit. I can't really say that one of those is better than the other. And like 60% less income in buttfuck Indiana versus Detroit, that's probably about equivalent when you do the cost of living adjustment. So,
and now he's been taken out of that job.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe they'll have to go back to Detroit. That's a pretty bleak outlook on life. But he was eager to work with his colleagues that he thought were world class. But in October, he learned of a group of local moms calling for him to be fired. And yeah, there's a Facebook post which we can't read it because they posted a blurry picture of it instead of a high-res one. It's not hard to get high-res pictures, guys. Come on.
Yeah, I was about to say, I can't even... Normally, I can read stuff when it's on your Zoom screen.
Yeah, no.
I can't see jack.
This is Monica Boyer, who says, I'm officially calling on Grace College to fire this professor immediately. If you have any contact with... Whatever. I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's someone calling for him to be fired because he said that gay people that have been married for 20 years should be allowed to be there for end-of-life decisions at the end of it. Like, who the fuck would be against that? Even if you're against gay marriage, like, you've been a couple for 20 years. You think the person who matters most to you in your life should not have the right to be there for end-of-life stuff? Like, fuck off. But yeah, so it was a former Turning Points USA ambassador and now faith-based political commentator, Kilgore, who they gave his first name earlier, Evan Kilgore. Warner proactively met with supervisors as Boyer's repeated demands gained traction among her nearly 8,000 Facebook followers. So, like, he proactively was like, hey, this is what's going on. People are calling for me to be fired. What do I need to do to make sure I still have a job? And they just, like... We're like,
Well.
Warner proactively met with supervisors as Boyer's repeated demands gained traction among her nearly 8,000 Facebook followers, but initial conversations were not reassuring. Flam, that's the president, that it becomes important to remember that Flam is the president later. And Backhit, the chief human resource officer, told Warner that he wasn't yet a faculty member because the board hadn't ratified him. Now the board was considering voting against Warner's ratification. He'd been teaching there for 4 months.
But he wasn't yet a faculty member.
What?
Christian institutions, very well organized, classically.
So now the board was considering voting against Warner's ratification, a move that would end his employment. Warner, who distinguishes between his support of people's civil rights and his theological convictions, said he has no qualms with the school's faith standards or lifestyle commitments. Grace College requires all faculty to sign a lifestyle commitment that affirms marriage as between one man and one woman and bans homosexual behavior. So
yeah,
he's still a bigoted piece of shit. He's just not as big a piece of shit as most bigoted piece of shits are.
I'm just gonna say
it's like attorneys general.
if you, man, I want to say somewhat violent things about those types of like the affirmations of faith and all of that. Like an affirmation of faith at a Christian institution just being, hey, you believe in the same God as we do. Okay, cool. That's at least somewhat reasonable. But when it's like, you also believe all of these political things, man, you know there are people that will actively get violent about their politics, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, this is what I'm saying. Like when they actually stick to their statements of faith and make people adhere to them as they start to get more narrow and narrow, it's not good for the academic stuff at the institution.
No, it's not.
It's like the academic pursuits have to be subjugated to their theological beliefs, and like if their theological beliefs are just wrong, which is a possibility. Like, I mean, obviously, I'm an atheist. I think they're all wrong. But like,
possibly incorrect.
Even if you're not an atheist, like, how many denominations of Christianity are there? Like 44,000 by some people's count. Now, I get that that's a controversial, like the institution that did that, which is a Christian institution, by the way. But the way they came to that conclusion is a bit controversial. But like, it is undeniable that there are thousands of denominations at the least. They can't all be right. So like, if like, no matter how firm you are in your convictions, like you have to, like, I know they don't, but like, you have to acknowledge the fact that like maybe one of these other denominations actually got it right and we're wrong. But if you tie everybody's like financial livelihood to saying that no, we are the right ones despite all the evidence to the contrary, then like that's not going to be good for you. Nope. Rosina says he's a bigoted piece of shit that understands his bigotry isn't how the world should work. Yeah, basically. Either that, or he's not a bigoted piece of shit, he's just willing to pretend to be one for the sake of employment. Which is almost as bad. Actually, I'd say that's equally as bad. Because if you're pretending to be a bigoted piece of shit, how is that functionally different from you actually being one?
Yeah, in terms of function and effect on the world, it's no different. It's like it's like when you look at a conservative commenter or a pundit. Does it matter that they are saying the bigoted thing or that they believe it? Whether or not they believe it is inconsequential. You have to treat it like they do, irrespective, because that's the effect on the world. Period.
Yep.
I think it was like Matt Dillahunty got asked a thing about Ken Ham once. Like, do you think that Ken Ham believes what he does? And I don't remember what Matt Dillahunty's answer to it was, but I know that when I've covered Ham, my answer to it has been, I don't give a shit if he believes this.
It doesn't matter. He acts as though he believes it, and so functionally it has the impact as though he believes it.
Yep.
Therefore, we must
like, what is the functional difference between him believing it and not believing it? Nothing.
And Adam Broughton says, thousands of denominations and multitudes of religions, they can't all be right, but they can all be wrong. Indeed. And then Naramdaput says, if doing it for money, it's worse than doing good for free, then obviously doing evil for money is... If doing good for money is worse than doing good for free, then obviously doing evil for money is worse than doing evil for free. So yeah, I actually kind of agree with that. Like, if you don't legitimately believe the bigoted shit that you're spewing, but you're willing to pretend that you believe it for money, that's worse than if you actually believed it. Because if you actually believe it, then at least you're being honest to your own convictions.
Yeah. Whereas otherwise, we know that...
Otherwise, you're just a slimy piece of shit.
Yeah, we know you can be bought. And I understand, like, to a degree, everybody's got some kind of, like, life-altering money price that they would be willing to do something stupid for if it meant, like, hey, you've got a sick family member and you need to, save their life. This is the type of shit that you would do.
So,
but still.
When I replied to, I want to say it was Ian Juby, like, he's a Canadian who operates out of Canada, and he operates a charitable organization. It's supposedly charitable, but it's a religious one, so it has like basically no oversight, and you can't learn anything about it because Canada has very similar rules to religious charity as the States, where they can just basically say, hey, I'm a religion, so don't look into me. But and like I said in the video, and it came across as like jokingly, like I looked into like making Viced Rhino a charity. But like I wasn't joking. I actually did look into making my YouTube channel a charity so I wouldn't have to pay taxes and all, and like it basically came down to like, unless I want to pretend to be a religion, which I'm not willing to lie about that. Like I'm not willing to, that just crosses a line for me.
You
like,
don't want to be part of the rhinoism religion?
Yeah, like I mean, I get the whole point of like the flying spaghetti monster thing, but I couldn't start an organization like that myself because, like, in order to get the religious status, you have to actually like at least pretend to be serious about it, and I couldn't do that. But to be a secular charity, there's just way too much oversight, and I wouldn't qualify. But like, if you did the exact same thing as I'm doing, but under the umbrella of religion, it's super easy. Barely an inconvenience. Got to get the Ryan George reference as long as we're talking about Canadian shit. But yeah, so like I legitimately looked into making me a because like there are educational charities I could fall under that. But then there's stuff like, in order for my house to be tax-free, it would have to be owned by the charity. And then I'd have to like set it up so like I'm paying myself a salary rather than just like the money going into my account and I can use it as I see fit. And like there actually would be oversight, and I'd have to like I don't know. It was too much. But like it came across in the video as a joke, but like I seriously looked into it. It was like, nope, I'd have to either lie about it, which I can't do, which would have saved me a shit ton of money over the years. Van Briggs says, I appreciate you wearing the hat for longer than usual. Much love. This one's easy to wear. It only falls off occasionally. But yeah. So Flam told Warner on December 7th that the board had voted not to ratify him. The HR guy offered Warner $60,000 for his voluntary resignation and a confidentiality agreement that included a non-disclosure agreement, which he refused, in part so he could finish out the school year. And they didn't provide him with a rationale for the decision, but the HR guy told Warner it was due to the tone and tenor of his social media posts. Which, what else could that be other than you posted
gay stuff?
You posted that gay people should be allowed to get married. VR,
like,
what's
that's
your
not
hat size?
a
I don't know my
tone and
hat
tenor
size.
thing.
My hat size is bigger than it needs to be because I always wear these headphones.
Who knows their hat size?
I don't know. I don't even know what unit hat sizes are in typically.
I don't either.
So yeah, the Beckett, the HR guy, said the fit isn't because of your theology. The fit is more about how you've come across in the past, and the concern or the confidence that it wouldn't happen again in the future. Other employees at Grace College said it feels like it's only a matter of time before I or anyone else cross an invisible line we didn't know was there, and are determined not to be missionally aligned, and therefore fired.
Said being paid $60,000 to scram sounds like a good deal.
Hat sizes are freedom units.
Not really. So while
it wasn't just scram, it was scram and never talk about this to anyone.
Non-disclosure. Yeah, there's more that you have to give up besides and just also leaving.
Keeping in mind that these guys took a significant pay cut to take the job, he very much this was a job that he was passionate about, not for the money. Like, he wanted to do that job specifically because he was passionate about that job, not because he wanted money. So when you're in a situation like that, it's actually fairly easy to turn down money. Like, I am passionate about my YouTube channel, so when Established Titles was like, hey, we'll pay you $1,200 a month just to rerun the one ad that you already recorded just once a month, but all my audience was like, hey, Established Titles is kind of sketchy, maybe don't associate with them. I said no to that money, and it was not hard for me to say no to that money.
Yep.
It was like, okay, no, this is like, I'm passionate about my channel. I want to only recommend products that I would actually recommend. So no, I'm not going to do that now that I've learned that
Yeah.
about them.
Yeah, Paige says that yeah, but they're broke though. And like, yeah, so I understandably, if you're in a situation where you don't have a lot of money, then 60,000 is life-changing money
Yeah,
for anybody.
absolutely.
But in this particular person's situation, it's not life-changing money, it's Tuesday money. It's money that
I
they would
mean,
make at any other job.
I mean, it was probably semi life-changing money because like this person is probably going to be able to like get another job in a similar field making similar amount of money, might even be able to make more money than they were making at Grace given that they took a 60% pay cut to take that job in the first place. So like like I'm not going to assume that they had a shit ton of money where 60,000 was nothing to them, but I'm also not going to like they showed through their actions that money was not the important thing about that job to them.
Mm-hmm.
So offering money to shut up about the fact that they were discriminating against them for views that they didn't even hold, like I don't know. But they're creating a low trust culture, so now there's other faculty that are thinking like I must be at risk too.
Yeah.
And apparently that's pervasive across faculty, especially because there was no definitive language around the why this guy was fired. And then students tried to organize a petition and a protest vouching for Warner, trying to get him back, but the administration didn't give them approval for that. And students are now disappointed in the college for not saying anything publicly about the situation and caving to outside pressure. By outside pressure, they mean like investors and people with financial stake in the college rather than the students who are actually there to learn. So like they care more about the people with the purse strings than they do about the students that they're supposed to be educating.
And that's one of the reasons why schooling should not be a for-profit organization in the first fucking place.
Absolutely. 100% with you on that one. But yeah, they go into that here. They say, as Christian colleges vie for a dwindling number of incoming students, many are struggling to navigate the chasm between the convictions of conservative stakeholders and those of the more theologically, politically, and radically diverse faculty and student bodies. In many cases, precarious finances have led schools to prioritize the former. So, like, yeah, they're catering to the people that hold the purse strings instead of the students that are there to get an education. And then, like, this is a pervasive problem across Christian institutions, not just this one. So, English professors at Taylor University and Palm Beach Atlantic University were dismissed after receiving alumni, donor, and parental criticism for their teachings on racial justice, although they had been teaching on that topic for over a decade. So, like, yeah, they teach that black people should be equal and there is systemic racism. That's a thing that exists. And now they've lost their job because the people with the money are like, we don't like critical race theory.
It's like, well, of course you don't, because critical race theory is one part of, a set of theories that people might end up using to, I don't know, consider that maybe the people with the purse strings am the bad guy.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, I feel like if the system that is educating students refuses to teach about how racism has been baked into the system, then that is itself systemic racism, is it not?
Yep.
Like, pretty much definitionally. So Matthew Bonzo, who has taught philosophy at Cornerstone University in Grand Rapids, Michigan for 26 years, told RNS that he was pushed out after refusing to sign an oath of loyalty committing unwavering support to the president and his policies. I don't know if that's the president of the university or like President Trump. Either one, that's terrifying. And the oath was dropped from the requirements, but Bonzo.
Why would you have to sign a fucking oath of loyalty in the first place? That feels draconian.
That feels to me like someone who is doing a lot of the same shit that Jerry Falwell was doing and wants to make sure that if he gets caught, there are no repercussions. Which, honestly, the solution to that is don't be a Christian bigot in your public life if your private life looks like Jerry Falwell's. For those of you who might be living under a rock and don't know about the Jerry Falwell Jr. thing, he liked to watch his wife get fucked by the pool boy, which is fine if you're not publicly out there being like, no, sanctity of marriage. No.
It's almost like it's okay to do cuckoldry if people aren't actually kink shaming you for it.
If you're into it and everybody is a consenting adult, then go for it. But don't go for it and then publicly preach against it. But like this is what that sounds like to me. This sounds like the president of that university was like, I got some skeletons in my closet and I want to make sure you guys are all contractually obligated to respect me, even if those skeletons come out. So, I don't know. That's what that sounds like to me. I'm not saying that's what it is, but yeah. Fennec says rules for the Eve, but not for me. Yeah, always. If you're Morbid Play says if you're into it, just be into it. Yeah, that's the thing about secularism though. Like if you're into weird shit in secularism, as long as everybody's a consenting adult, most people don't give a fuck.
Yep. So we don't kink shame from Ken Ashcorp. Ken Ashcorp's great. I love his content.
We only kink shame if you're into feet because feet are gross.
No, feet are fine. Scat
I'm
is
kidding.
Scat is what we will kink shame for.
Scat?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, 2 girls, 1 cup stuff. Pooping.
No, I'm talking about real men wear diapers. I was hoping that I had the pictures up when I pulled that back up. But
you just pulled up a thing that says real men wear you just said scat, real men wear diapers.
Yeah. I mean, Trump is into water sports, apparently. And again, that's one of those things where it's like, if he just came out and admitted, like, yeah, that's one of the things I'm into, I'm like, okay, that's fine. You do you. It's not for me. But you do you. As long as everybody's consenting adult, that's fine. But because he's trying to appeal to the Christian nationalists, he can't admit that's a thing that he's into. Anyway, Rosina says, I know creationists and far-right orgs have statements of faith and loyalty pledges. Yeah, actually, Answers Research Journal.
Don't worry, not a cult.
Answers Research Journal actually has a thing where it's like in their submission requirements, so like, your submission must adhere to our statement of faith and whatnot, or whatever. And if you read the statement of faith, it's obviously young earth creationism shit. So it's like, yeah, no, our supposedly peer-reviewed research journal will refuse to publish anything that doesn't conclude that the Earth is only 6,000 years old and evolution's a lie. But yeah, it's a legit science journal, y'all. Excuse me.
It just doesn't follow any of the rules of a legit science journal.
Yeah. So Bonzo told RNS that he's seeing many Christian colleges attempt to shield students from conversations about race and gender due to fear of undermining the students' faith. If saying treat everybody with respect and dignity, regardless of race, gender, sexual orientation, whatever, is something that would undermine your faith, then maybe your faith should be undermined.
God, I love every single thing about everything that comes out of Christian education institutions. And totally not because I was raised by those institutions and I have deep-seated hatred for them for years of abuse. Totally not because of that.
Yeah, and so
but maybe a little because of that.
Cornerstone, the one that had the president trying to get people to sign a oath of loyalty to him, these guys confirmed that over 100 employees have departed since the arrival of the current president in 2021. So apparently he's not very popular. People don't want to give their oath of loyalty to him. Like, what sort of monarchistic bullshit is that?
I'm just trying to figure out, like, what kind of person requests an oath of loyalty in the first place? Because that just sounds like somebody who's sitting there like they're on a throne of skulls or some shit.
The kind of person who is Caesar as portrayed by Shakespeare. Yeah, I am the Northern Star, constant in my whatever, and you all must bow to my things. And that's on my mind right now because of my video coming out on Friday.
God has ordained me. You are loyal.
So spoiler for my video on Friday. I found like I was looking into the like how the genetic code first evolved, and one of the papers that I found, so there was like this big, long, complicated process that had the word wobbling in it, which I kind of liked. That was being suppressed by the single. It was EF-TU. And I'm like, I don't know if it's EFTU or if it would be pronounced F2 or if something else or whatever. But as soon as I read it, my mind immediately went to Et tu, Brute. And so as I was recording that part of the video, I had my partner stab me as we recited some Shakespeare. Warner, back to Warner, who, if you'll remember, he's the guy that initially
He's the guy who got
he was
fired.
the guy who got fired. So in January, he filed a faculty grievance charging Flam and Beckett with alleged violations of college policy. But under the college bylaws, the president, who, if you'll remember, is Flam, is the final arbiter of faculty grievances. So Flam found that Flam did not do anything wrong.
The internal review of the police officers have found that none of the police officers did anything incorrectly.
Yeah.
Fancy that.
He also submitted a board appeal requesting that a third party hear his case, but the board affirmed Flam's ruling on the grievance. So, yeah.
Cool.
Basically, Christian institutions are shit, even to fellow bigoted Christians. Because the fellow bigoted Christian wasn't overtly bigoted enough.
You must be at least this bigoted to ride this ride.
Van Brigg says, sounds like a flim-flam.